Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, with September being Suicide Prevention Month, we're hearing from local groups on ways to help those looking for support. Plus, Ukraine's president visits the White House. More about his request for additional funding for Ukraine and why it's receiving some pushback from lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
And the Mountain Heritage Festival back in action here in beautiful downtown Whitesburg. We'll have the forecast for this festival, all the other ones in the weekend, coming up in just a few minutes. Mountain News at 5:30 starts right now.
Dedicated to Southern and Eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. It's been more than a year since 988 became the new suicide and crisis lifeline. Ever since, calls have continually increased across the Commonwealth. Jeremy Tom sat down with local mental health experts to discuss the impact of the hotline and how they are handling all those calls.
On this Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month, mental health experts say Kentuckians are becoming more aware of a key resource.
We had 55,362 calls in our first year at 988 in Kentucky.
Calls to 988 from Lexington and 16 surrounding counties are answered by New Vista.
Our 988 crisis call takers are the first responders on the phone.
Darcy Miller supervises the center and says those responders keep getting busier. They're on pace to pick up the phone more than 5,000 times this year.
We've seen about a 19% increase in 988 calls.
On top of hiring new staff members, Miller says they're also now bringing in volunteers to help manage an ever-increasing volume of calls.
So we're at about somewhere in the process about 7 volunteers, and we're hoping our goal is to get 40.
She hopes that expansion will allow them to text and chat with those in need, a function which experts say is being used more and more by teens and men over the age of 40.
You don't always want to say it out loud, what's going on, or you're not always in a space where that's okay. You can get help wherever you are, and I think that's been really beneficial.
While the numbers trending upwards signal that thousands of Kentuckians need help, these mental health professionals are encouraged that people are going and seeking it out.
Treating your mental health is just as important as treating your physical health. If you're struggling with anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide, ask for help. That's what we're here for.
In Lexington, Jeremy Toms, WKYT.
Experts also point out that 80% of the time, these are fellow Kentuckians picking up your call. So if you call 988, they can point you to any of the local resources you may need.
Starting to fill in here in downtown Whitesburg for the annual Mountain Heritage Festival. Beautiful downtown. Back live in action. People coming in continuously, and it's going to be a great festival here in Whitesburg. Let's take a look at downtown Whitesburg from our camera up on the MCHC building just down the street from us. You can see the Mountain Heritage Festival Village right from down that way. And again, it's one of those situations where it's a beautiful day here. Sun finally reappeared. The clouds trying to thin out just a little bit, so we are in decent shape. So as we take you over and kind of look at some temperatures and some conditions out there, we're going to continue to see the possibility for, again, a bit of a warm night across parts of the region. We're still in the 70s and 80s, 68 down here in Whitesburg right now, but again, we're just kind of keeping an eye on things, and we'll continue to watch this. So temperatures basically running in the 70s and 80s. If we can, Cameron, take over for me. I've lost connection here. We'll go to the zoomed out surface map because we've got a system that we're tracking to our west and one to our southeast. That's not going to bring us many issues, but again, we're going to continue to see some dry air in place at least through tonight, so a great night to get out and come on down here. Mountain Heritage forecast, again, fantastic. Temperatures eventually drop into the 60s and maybe the 50s overnight, and then we'll see a perfect day again tomorrow and potentially on Saturday. I'll have the latest forecast, including the possibility for our next best chance of rain in just a few minutes. Steve?
All right, Brandon, thank you. Convicted killer Alex Murdaugh has pleaded guilty to nearly 24 federal fraud and money laundering charges. In court earlier today, Murdaugh said he wanted his son to see him take responsibility for his actions. Murdaugh was a personal injury lawyer who was accused of stealing millions of dollars from his clients. The judge signed and accepted the plea agreement. Murdaugh faces up to 30 years in prison for these crimes. The reported drunk driver accused of killing a bride on her wedding night has been indicted. Jamie Komorowski was indicted on 4 counts related to the April 28th crash in Folly Beach. The bridal party, including newlyweds Eric Hutchinson and Samantha Miller, were on a golf cart-style vehicle returning from their reception when police say Komorowski drove her car into the vehicle. Authorities say Komorowski's blood alcohol level was 3 times more than the legal limit. A North Carolina family is suing Google, claiming their family member died after the company's navigation system led the man off a collapsed bridge. The lawsuit says Philip Paxson was following GPS directions when he drove off an unmarked, unbarricaded edge. He crashed about 20 feet below and drowned. The family is accusing Google of failing to correct its mapping algorithms despite repeated pleas from people for the road to be fixed or properly barricaded. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered a stark message to lawmakers today. He needs their help in order to save his country. But not everyone in Washington is willing to help. CBS's Natalie Brand has more from the White House.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky made his second wartime visit to the White House.
Together with our partners and allies, the American people are determined to see to it that you do all we can to ensure the world stands with you, and that is our overwhelming objective.
It comes as President Biden is pushing Congress to approve an additional $24 billion in military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine.
When it comes to weapons, we will discuss everything with a special emphasis on air defense.
Zelensky spent the morning making his case on Capitol Hill in a series of private meetings. Lawmakers say Ukraine's president painted a stark picture of the situation on the ground.
If we step away from supporting them, the Russians will win this war. He was very clear about that.
But the White House funding request is facing growing opposition from some Republicans who have raised concerns about spending and accountability.
The question, though, for the United States is, what is it that we are trying to accomplish and at what cost? I mean, we're going to spend another $100 billion for what?
Republicans who support additional funding say the U.S. cannot afford to let Russia win.
The majority of the majority support this. I know there's some dissension on both sides, but I said a war of attrition is not going to win this, and that's what Putin wants.
Even as Zelensky was in the Capitol Thursday, the fight over funding the U.S. government to avoid a shutdown took a new turn on the House floor.
The yeas are 212, the nays are 216. The resolution is not adopted.
Hard-right Republicans again blocked a move to vote on a Pentagon spending bill.
I had 2 people flip.
Speaker Kevin McCarthy thought he had the votes to pass. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
The Pentagon spending bill is typically the easiest of the 12 appropriations packages to pass, prompting some lawmakers to say the odds of a shutdown have now gone up. Lawmakers need to pass something by the end of the month to keep the government running. Now, the vote to reject that defense spending bill was 216 to 212. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who you just saw, appeared to be frustrated after the vote, slamming Republicans who want to, quote, burn the place down. Lawmakers, as I said, only have 9 days to reach an agreement now on a budget resolution. The Defense Department is sending 800 new active duty personnel to the U.S.-Mexico border to provide support to federal authorities facing an increase in border crossings. They are joining the 2,500 National Guard members already in place. Department of Homeland Security officials made the announcement last night in a call with reporters while addressing the recent rise in migrant encounters. The U.S. military has long provided support to DHS on the border. The auto workers' strike has hit the 1-week mark. In the past 48 hours, talks have resumed, with the UAW meeting with Ford and GM yesterday and Stellantis today. But despite that seemingly positive development, there is a red line ahead and quickly approaching. CNN's Laura Aguirre has more on what that is and what it means.
If we have to strike more, close more, then we'll do that.
The United Auto Workers Union says their walkouts will expand if the nation's 3 largest automakers don't give them a better contract proposal by noon Friday.
I would like to see fair wages for everybody. I would say most of these employees probably live paycheck to paycheck.
Higher wages, 40% higher over 4 years, one of several union demands. The UAW is currently striking at 3 plants, representing each of the big 3 U.S. auto brands. But the threat of Friday's deadline is already having ripple effects. Stellantis, which is meeting with UAW leadership Thursday, is temporarily laying off some non-union workers at their Toledo, Ohio machining plant. GM and Ford are doing the same at some of their other facilities. Those on the picket lines know it's not just auto workers feeling the impact.
I would like to see us get back to work so those other suppliers get back to work and uplift this economy.
The strike fallout also hitting auto industry suppliers. U.S. Steel in Granite City, Illinois laid off several hundred workers this week.
I've had grown men crying in my office that don't know how they're going to provide for their families. It's very difficult. And I know it's business to them, but it's personal to us.
For now, those business talks continue as the deadline clock keeps ticking. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting.
500,000 children and families have their Medicaid coverage back after many states improperly terminated their enrollment. Late last month, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services told every state and territory to check their systems and make sure they were evaluating each member of the household individually. At issue is the state's use of existing data to automatically determine the eligibility of certain Medicaid recipients. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, retiring early is a dream for many. So how do you make that happen? Steps you can take to reach your retirement goal.
Things are cooling down here at the Mountain Heritage Festival in Whitesburg, so it's still a great night to cut out. Still lots of things going on tonight and all weekend long. I have the forecast for that coming up in just a few minutes.